Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on X at Movies TV Mad, on Instagram Movies TV Mad X, on YouTube Movies TV Mad, 3 separate words, and on TikTok. Mick isn't perfect because, as you can see, I'm not perfect, but you're not perfect either. Because we're a world of people who are not perfect, we can't look down and judge each other. I'm sorry, if you do, you're just a damn hypocrite. Welcome to today's extended 30-minute video, where today we're talking about Doctor Who. We're talking about the ratings. We're talking about the realization from the fandom menace that they've lost to one of the most cleverest, intelligent creatives in the history of the art form, and that's Russell T Davies. Yes, it must be very, very painful for the fandom menace this morning. They're bruised. Their egos are hurt because they weren't able to take down Doctor Who. They were hashtagging RIP Doctor Who. It was trending around their own community, which means jack shit. And as I say, it must be very difficult to their pride and egos, because normally they've been very successful in taking Hollywood down. Disney, especially Disney, they hate Disney, right? And they've been very successful. I mean, look at the Rings of Power. Look what Nerd Roddick did single-handedly with the Rings of Power. It's clear the fandom menace have a lot of intelligent people and know how to stir the shit and manipulate people to get angry. And they've done it successfully on many occasions. But then you decided to go against Russell T Davies. And here's the truth, everyone. You failed. It's Russell T Davies 1, the fandom menace 0. But who are the fandom menace? The fandom menace rose up after the release of The Last Jedi, directed by Rian Johnson. There was a lot of angry Star Wars fans. They started making videos and people started watching them and saying, "You're right," because they're very clever. They know how to talk, they know how to suck you in. They've even sucked me in at times. But here's the thing. I think sometimes the fandom menace say some very true, factual things about Hollywood and entertainment. But here's the problem with the fandom menace. They're right-wing and they're political. And the reason they hate the entertainment industry, because they're predominantly progressives and left-wing. It's a political tug-of-war, and they're tugging you, the fans, in that direction. But here's the thing. Here's the breaking news that you already know. Russell T Davies doesn't work in Hollywood. He works in the United Kingdom. He's a Welsh creative who's done Queer as Folk. He's worked on children's television back in the 80s. He's done it all. He's not just a storyteller, he's a producer. And they were never taking down Russell T Davies. It's quite simple. Your group failed to do it. You know what's interesting to me? Being on the other side of the hatred for once and being a fan of Russell T Davies and what he did with Doctor Who from 2005, from today, it made me see how dumb and stupid I must look when I'm, tweeting or Xing or whatever we're calling it today, hate about entertainment and about certain things. I must look as stupid and as dumb as they do right now. Because basically, look at what they're upset about. They're angry that there's disabled representation. They're angry that a disabled person had rockets coming out of her wheelchair. It's just to empower a community. It's harmless, right? And what's wrong with uplifting trans kids who are bullied all the time for what they are? In this episode of Doctor Who, The Star Beast, we hear Rose dead named. What does that mean? Again, I'm going to explain to you what it means. So obviously, if you're a trans person, you were once somebody else with another name, right? And you were in the body you were trapped inside that wasn't really yours, right? Hopefully I've got that right. And if I've got anything wrong, please feel free to correct me. It's not done to be disrespectful. So normally when someone goes through the process of change and becomes trans, they change their name, obviously, right? And what some people do is dead name them and call them the name they used to go under. And this is what we see happen to Rose in the Starbase. So it basically is one of the worst things you could do to a trans person. I think it was important. As I say, I think the episode was brilliant. Was it on the nose sometimes? Do you think, oh wow, that's on the nose, yeah? But at the end of the day, as I said in my review, it wasn't like he was saying nuclear holocaust's a good man, serial killers are good. He was just trying to uplift disabled people and the trans community, especially trans kids. So I'm going to let him off, right? When you're trying to do good things, look, I don't care if you don't like the trans community. I don't care about that. It's not about what you like or what you don't. At the end of the day, they're not hurting you, right? They're not hurting you. They're not doing anything. So RTD, a member of the LGBTQ community, right? Let's not forget RTD had a partner, I think, who died of AIDS. RTD is at the very heart of what gay people went through in the 80s. So it's to no surprise that he's very passionate about representation for trans people, because he went through a lot of shit, as a lot of his community did back in the 80s. So you get it. So basically, the fandom menace haven't won. Their takes on social media are embarrassing. And now let's talk about the ratings. The ratings have come in at 5.1 million. These are the consolidated overnight views. This means these are the people who watched live and recorded the episode. Recording is deemed as watching live because if you didn't record it, you would have watched it live. Get it right. So this is not the end of the ratings. There will be iPlayer views to come in. We could be looking at 2 million or another 3 million extra viewers to add on. That will be around 8.1 million viewers. That means if the iPlayer didn't exist, and this is a factual statement, 8 million people would have watched Doctor Who live in the United Kingdom. Now, in any stretch of the imagination, even the fandom menaces who have tried to spin the 5.1 million as bad would say that's very, very successful. And I expect them to get better and better and better as we go into these final 2 episodes with David Tennant, these anniversary episodes with David and Catherine, and as we get into Shooty. Because I believe Shooty and Millie are going to be the dream team. Young people are going to see those 2 beautiful actors, talented actors together, and they're going to suck it up. Basically, perfect casting from RTD because he's a genius, right? So the fandom menace can keep on screaming and shouting because their right-wing ideology doesn't like, representation. They don't seem to like disabled people. They don't seem to like anyone. That's the problem. All the right wings seem to like is flags, guns and Bibles. That's what their rhetoric is. They hate immigrants. They hate anyone who isn't the same as them. Who does that remind you of? But, that's who they are. So if you're someone who defends the fandom menace, think about what you're supporting. Yes, I subscribe to a lot of those YouTube channels. In a way, I've been sucked into them as well because I've seen the decline of entertainment and they're the ones who are talking about it, right? And a lot of the things they say is true, but look, I remember Jeremy from Geeks and Gamers actually saying outright that he doesn't care about Hollywood fixing itself, that he basically does what he does as a business. That's very honest, and I respect that, Jeremy. I really do. So you know where they're coming from, right? They found the problem in society, in entertainment, something very important to a lot of people, and they like stirring it up because they're making money. And in a capitalist society, they have every right to do that. And sometimes I will agree with them, and sometimes I won't. I'll carry on, right, watching them. I mean, what about Bowstreak, this one who's always hated the fact the Doctor became a woman? I don't understand that mentality. The Doctor can literally regenerate into most entities, right? We know that. There was never anything wrong with the Doctor being a woman. Unfortunately, the female actor, Jodie, who was cast, was let down by her creative head writer and showrunner, Chris Chibnall. He wrapped her up in cotton wool. We've discussed that before. It simply didn't work. And ultimately, the last thing the Doctor should ever be labelled by is boring. He created a very boring, underwhelming Doctor. That's not on Jodie, that's on Chris Chibnall. And it didn't fail because she was a woman, it failed because it wasn't done properly. Never make the Doctor boring. The Doctor should be the biggest personality in the room, the most smartest personality in the room. And really, that's been a thing since Tom Baker. It was really Tom Baker that created the Doctor as this large personality. He wasn't he wasn't, I'm the Doctor before. It was only really Tom Baker who created that with his kind of, creepy grin. I mean, creepy in the bestest of ways, and, the scarf and everything. That's when the Doctor became a big character, really. So the Doctor should always be the biggest personality in the room. So basically, the ratings on today's terms are really good. But the fandom menace will always find a way to stir the narrative up. So they're comparing it to the ratings of The Day of the Doctor, which is one special episode. Over 10 million on the day. Now, what I don't recollect was it 10 million before iPlayer views? No, it wasn't. It was 10 million before iPlayer views. Now I'm remembering, right? So let's just say this episode, The Star Beast, gets around 8 million, right? Around that. Let's just say that. Maybe a bit less, maybe a bit more. It's still good. Because the thing is, The Day of the Doctor was one movie, one event, so everyone needed to watch it. But this is different. This is the first episode, right? Then you've got another episode. Then you've got the big one. Really, the third episode is what you compare to The Day of the Doctor. That's the big one. That's the big climactic episode. So basically, everything is really healthy and well in the world of Doctor Who. As I say, this is progressive entertainment made by progressives. The people in entertainment in Hollywood and the United Kingdom, especially the BBC, have always been progressives. And there's some stuff that they get carried away with. There was a little bit of man bashing in The Star Beast when Donna says, a male projecting Time Lord, and you don't understand, and us women just let it go. And then they kind of let the whole, meta crisis go out of their mouths. It's like they're gobbing it out of their mouths. That's what I want to talk about next. Either Russell T Davies has found, let's just say, a very easy, lame way to solve a very complex problem, or Russell T Davies is luring us all into a false sense of security. So if this is it, if Donna and Rose are now just basically gobbed out the meta crisis, and it's as simple as that, even though I think it's too simple and a bit lame, I love RTD, and that episode made me feel like a kid again, so I'm going to let it go and not be ultra critical, because at the end of the day, the episode was fantastic as far as I'm concerned. From the moment David comes on screen, from the moment we see those stunning titles, brilliant, fantastic, I loved it. So I will let you off. But here's the thing, I don't believe it's as simple as that. I don't think Donna's issues with the meta crisis is over, because RTD didn't mention one thing in his script, because we go back to Journey's End, another entity was created as part of Donna's meta crisis. The half-human, half-Time Lord from Gallifrey, Doctor, who was also played by David Tennant. RTD doesn't mention him once. Because at the end of the day, why wouldn't you mention him? It's not like you have to bring another actor, right? You've got David there already, so what's going on? So if we go back months and months ago when we heard David was coming back, it was my ongoing theory, if you remember, that David was playing the human meta crisis Doctor, who he also played in the season 4 finale, Journey's End. I believe this is who David is playing again. And by him not being mentioned and being skipped over, I believe this is exactly what's going on. That David Tennant's 14th Doctor is in fact the human meta crisis Doctor. And it hasn't been mentioned on purpose because he's not ready to mention it. Mick, we don't agree with you, we think you're wrong. All right, okay. Let's look back to the ending of the power of the Doctor. I said it at the time. It looked nothing like a regeneration. Think about it, right? We get this shiny regeneration energy when Jodie's on screen. Then all of a sudden, David appears. But not how a normal regeneration would happen. Let's remember, he's not wearing Jodie's clothes. Now, I know RTD explained it away, saying he didn't want to make a mockery of a woman's clothes. That's just BS. That's just RTD playing around with us and the press. He's fondly, gloated before that he always lies to the press and the fans. Because he has to, right? He's not going to spoil his own show. So the way he turns up with his own clothes, it's obvious that this is the human meta-crisis Doctor. It almost seems more like a trans man, right, than a regeneration. And I think this is exactly what's going on. And I believe Ncuti Gatwa's Doctor has already come through. He's already regenerated, but he's somewhere else. I believe he's in that no place we saw in The Power of the Doctor. Like the Time Lord, Doctory Heaven, with all the versions of the Doctor there. We saw some of them, not all of them, of course. We saw Paul McGann there, which was great. I believe that's where Ncuti Gatwa is. But he's not going to be wearing Jodie's clothes. I think we've seen clips, and he's wearing David's clothes for some reason, right? Because they've decided they don't want the men wearing Jodie's clothes. Fair enough, I think it's dumb RTD. But again, I love you, I love what you do, so I'm going to let it go. And again, progressive people in the entertainment industry have a certain mindset. We can't change people, right? All we can ask from this industry, whatever messaging you do, you make it fun and entertaining. And that's what they did with the Star Beast, and I'm just very excited for Wild Blue Yonder, and I'm going to warn you about Wild Blue Yonder, which is next week's Doctor Who episode at 6:30 on BBC One and the iPlayer and Disney Plus for everyone outside of the UK. This is an extremely dark episode. This is the one RTD was, hyping up as not really one for the children. This really is a fucked up episode. I can tell you that now, and I'm looking forward to all of you seeing it. So that's my ongoing theory. And it's going to be, this is why Donna's there, because this is what he wanted to do. Look, a Time Lord, the Doctor, can't regenerate into an older version. This has been mentioned by RTD himself in the comic relief episode when Eccleston becomes Tennant and they do that extra scene. If you've got the Doctor Who Blu-ray or DVD from season 2, I think, you can actually, season 2, right? There is a scene which you can get, or check it out on YouTube. It's not comic relief, it's Children in Need, right? And it's David Tennant, Billy Piper, check it out. And she goes, "Can you turn back?" And he goes, "No, I can't." So it's there. It's canonical. And you could say that it's just Children in Need and Russell can just explain it away. Maybe he can. I am literally 100% sure that David is playing that human meta-crisis Doctor from Journey's End. And I do believe we will have a Billy Piper, Rose Tyler cameo. She did wish happy anniversary the other day. That doesn't mean anything. But I think she will be there. I think basically that final episode, the giggle, is going to be epic. That's your Day of the Doctor. It'll probably be about an hour long, right, or whatever it's going to be. But that's the one. That's the End of Time Part 2. This, you could even call it, I think, the End of Time Part 3. RTD did like that when he first came back, and I said the End of Time Part 3. So, again, he could have been messing with me by liking that. You never know with this man. That's why the fandom menace will never beat him. He's too clever. He knows how to do good representation and inclusion. You will never beat this man. He loves Doctor Who. He understands what to do for the best. And his stuff excites me. The criticism of him has been, oh, this is just the same as the old RTD Doctor Who. Everyone brings themselves to their writing. What did you expect him to do? Be like Chibnall? Be like Moffat? Be like the classic Who? What did you think he was going to do? RTD can only be RTD. He can do things a little bit different and do more interesting things because he's a vast, intelligent writer. But if you love the RTD era, like most of us did, I think it's party time and you're going to enjoy it. And the people who hated RTD are mostly the hardcore classic fans because he didn't keep it like the classic days, because he had to contemporize it or no one would fucking watch it, apart from the classic fans, right? And you can't do that. There's no point in that, right? You have to, like, I'm 51 years old, and even I understand that you have to contemporize things, especially when you're doing reboots, relaunches, and Doctor Who's not a reboot. RTD relaunched the show. As a fan, he was never going to start it again. Although that's another theory of mine, that after the giggle, we could have a somewhat relaunch. Something is going to happen here that changes everything. It's going to be very interesting what RTD does. But I also have an ongoing theory about the Timeless Child. When RTD took over, I said he had two options in terms of the Timeless Children. One was to ignore it, which isn't a very good idea considering how polarizing that storyline was from Chibnall. I think he's going to deal with it. I've heard he mentioned something about it in Wild Blue Yonder. I think he's going to do something to finish it up and put it away once and for all. He's already stated he won't overwrite it, and we've covered that to no ends on my platform. No point going over that again. So I believe him. He's playing with words. He won't unwrite the Timeless Children, but he's going to deal with it. He's going to deal with it in a way where it never has to be dealt with again. RTD is clever enough to do that, but I do think he's going to deal with it. We've already heard the Doctor say that he doesn't know who he is anymore, and I discussed that in my review, that he's having the ultimate identity crisis. He's referring to the Timeless Children. He literally doesn't know who he is anymore, and that's a little hint that RTD is going to deal with the elephant in the room, which is the Timeless Children. He has to deal with it. That's what I said all along. You can't ignore this, right? You can't unwrite anything that's been in Doctor Who. I mean, I'm sure RTD and Moffat and Chibnall hate the fact in Doctor Who the movie, the Doctor claims he's half human on his mother's side. This is something many Doctor Who fans have hated since they saw it. It never touched me, it never bothered me. He could have been joking, who knows? It doesn't really matter. But it never bothered me, and even if he is half human on his mother's side, I think that makes the Doctor more interesting and explains why he's so obsessed with the human race. But never mind. I don't know what they were thinking of putting that line in there, but they did it. There's always a way to upset hardcore Doctor Who fans. In fact, it doesn't take much to upset hardcore Doctor Who fans. Now, I'm a hardcore Doctor Who fan. I love Doctor Who. But I understand that things need to be contemporized and we can't do things the way we once did them, right? Superman Legacy will be nothing like Superman the movie, neither should it. Superman the movie was made from 1975 to 1978 when it was released. You're talking over 40 fucking years ago. Things change. Things move on. That's life. You know, and to try and fight, you know, moving on and modernization would take the world and humanity backwards. And some people are so obsessed with fighting back and keeping things as they are. This is the way things are now. I've said it about the trans community. The trans community are now in the mainstream. They're going to be represented in different corporations. We've seen it in alcohol. We've seen it with Bud Light. And there was a lot of anger about that. And there's a lot of complicated issues when it comes to the trans community because they're somewhat new, you know, within our race of humanity, right? Because they weren't always in the mainstream, they were in the background before. But once you bring people out, that's it. They're part of the community. But it's going to take a long time for the hatred and the to and from it to stop. With new normals, you need a new way of living, you know, and it is very, very difficult. But in terms of entertainment, we're going to keep getting representation and inclusion. Some of it will be bad, and when it's bad, I will call it out. But when it's done well, as it was in the Star Beast, even though some of the on-the-nose stuff was a bit too corny for me, and obviously you don't get any man-bashing in a modern-day episode of entertainment or movies, then you worry about the creative that they had a bad day, or maybe they're ill, or maybe they've got a headache, you offer them a paracetamol. Because normally, man-bashing has been part of entertainment, contemporary entertainment for the past 30 years. It's been happening for a very, very long time. So, that whole thing, you're a male, you're a male projecting Time Lord and you don't understand us women let things go. At the end, and look, and you could just see the smugness of it. But at the end of the day, I let that shit go because I liked the episode. Because the episode and RTD had its heart in the right place. And when they've got their hearts in the right place, I'm fine with it. So the ratings were strong. The fandom menace this time are on the losing side because it isn't the same as fighting Hollywood. Because Hollywood doesn't have very, very smart people working there anymore. But Russell T Davies is one of the brightest bulbs in British television. And you ain't going to take him down. But let's ask another question. Because he did create a storm with the Davros change, right? Was it clever as a producer to start, arguing with a couple of people on his Instagram over this Davros situation and to vocalize why Davros is no longer in the chair, right? And why we're doing a prequel of him? Was it wise to talk about the bad stereotype of, Davros being a bad stereotype for the disabled? Was that a right thing to do? Well, business-wise, it probably wasn't, and it probably cost, the Star Beast maybe a couple of million viewers. Maybe. I think older fans would have been very, very upset by that, and maybe boycotted. Maybe not. Personally, I think he's well within his rights to look at Davros from another angle, but he didn't need to talk about it the way he did. And he also didn't need to talk to a couple of fans the way he did on his Instagram. But I still love him. I adore him. This is not about hate. I can disagree with someone I look up to, admire and love, but we can still be mates. That's something the world we live in doesn't seem to understand. I can disagree with the fandom menace on this subject of Doctor Who right now, but say they do a lot of good things in calling out this industry, and I can still follow them. I can do both, right? But if they come into me and they start attacking me, then I'll just get rid of them. I'll just, mute them or whatever, because I'm not in for that shit. You've got to be able to understand that you have your point of view and I have mine, and that's absolutely fine. But when we start attempting to destroy each other personally because we don't like each other's takes, it becomes a bit of a problem, and I'm not down for that. But we do live in this very, very polarizing world right now. And it's true that Doctor Who has been polarizing older fans since 2005. And this whole Davros thing and what RTD did, in the Star Beast with the transgender messaging and all of that, is just an excuse for these older right-wing fans to hate RTD. As I said before, you're wasting your oxygen. The ratings are very, very strong. The love for RTD is very, very strong because you can't underestimate what RTD has done for Doctor Who. Not only did he keep a lot of the previous audience, because there's a lot of older fans who love New Who, right? It's not all hatred, right? That's a section of right-wing hardcore fans. Forget them, right? He kept predominantly the original audience and he brought in the new generation, who are still there now, that have grown up watching Doctor Who since Rose, right? That's genius. That's exactly what George Lucas did with the Phantom Menace, bringing in a new generation, but keeping the older generation predominantly as well. RTD, as a Doctor Who fan, has done so much for something that he's loved all his life. As far as I'm concerned, Russell T Davies is a genius. I could never hate Russell, or say anything hurtful about him, because I love him. I think he's great. I think he's one of the great eggs from this industry. I think he's an absolute genius. And I'm so happy, especially after watching the Star Beast episode, that he's back in charge of Doctor Who. And as far as I'm concerned, with Russell at the helm, the show has a bright future ahead of it.